Hey YouTube, my name's Anthony. Welcome to my channel MYOGear. Today I'm going to be working on a hammock. This hammock happens to be for my daughter. For materials I chose a 1.6 ounce Hyper D in royal purple that I purchased from Ripstop by the Roll. And the reason why I went with a 1.6 ounce Hyper D instead of a lighter material was because I wanted it to match the underquilt. So I got the 1.6 ounce for the hammock, and I also got the 1.0 ounce Hyper D for the outside of the underquilt. The other reason also was that my 6-year-old at some point will likely jump into the hammock with her, and I wanted to make sure that I had a fabric strong enough to hold both of their weights. So the size of your finished project is really personal preference. You just have to make sure that when you're planning how much fabric you need, that you leave enough for the seam allowance on the sides as well as the end channels. I'll go over that as I'm sewing. So I already have my fabric cut, my machine set up. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So for the side seams, I'm going to be doing a rolled hem. The size of your hem is really personal preference. You can do quarter, you can do 3/8, you can do 1/2 inch. I'm going to do a 3/8 inch rolled hem for the side seams. So I'm going to start by, of course, rolling my fabric twice. Okay. And I have a seam gauge that I keep handy. So I'll just go ahead and kind of adjust it till it's where I want. Now I could pop a couple pins in here to start out with. I am not going to. I'm just going to go ahead, and once I get my fabric in and get my needle down, I can go ahead and make sure that there's enough rolled seam to start. Go ahead and once you get your needle down, get a couple stitches in there, then I can. Now, if you don't use a hot knife for your fabric, you do tend to get these little straggly threads, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim those. Okay, and as I go along, I'm just going to continuously check with my seam gauge to make sure that my hem stays at 3/8. Once you do this, a few times, you don't need to use the seam gauge. You can do it by eye. Okay, so I'll go ahead and back stitch, and that locks my stitches, and I'm good to go. Okay. And if you have any of these loose threads as well, if you don't want to spend your time cutting them, as long as they're not too big, what you do is just, when you roll your hem, just run your finger along and make sure that they're tucked in. And you can always trim them if, when you're done, they're sticking out. Okay. And that is one side. I'm going to go ahead and sew the other. So my side hems are complete. I'm going to go ahead and mark for the channels. There's a couple ways that you can do the channels. Probably the easiest way would be to go ahead and just do a large rolled hem essentially. Go ahead and take a few inches of fabric, roll it twice, and then sew a few lines of stitches, and then you'll have your channel. But what I like to do to save on material is I am going to mark 2 lines, one on the top. I'm going to mark it 1 inch, And then on the bottom of the hammock, I'm going to mark another spot at 6 inches. And then I'm going to, when I roll it, I'm going to line up those 2 lines, and I'm going to do my hem there. So I'll go ahead and show you what I mean there. So to mark this line, I'm going to use a see-through ruler. I just find it the easiest way to do it. I'm going to set the edge of the fabric on 1 inch, and then I'm going to take my chalk, and I'm going to mark that line. Now for the bottom side, or what I like to call the bottom side, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, except since my 6-inch ruler is MIA at the time, I'll have to talk to the kids when they get home. I'll go ahead and mark it like so. Connect the dots. Okay. So now what I do is when I bring it up to the machine and I roll this, I basically just connect the 2 lines and go ahead and sew right there, so I don't have all that extra fabric inside my channel. Now that I am back at the machine, what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this on my first line, and then I'm going to roll it again, and I'm going to line up the 2. And I could also throw a pin in here just to keep it in place while I start, because it is hard to see. The chalk wears off fast. And once I drop my needle, I can go ahead and position it a little better. Okay. Pins would definitely help to hold this together, but I'm just going to go slow. And once I get my first row of stitching in, the other 2 will be a breeze. Okay, and that's the first one. Okay, so that's the finished channel. So the last thing to do is going to be to bar tack between these 3 rows of stitches, but I'm going to have to set up the other machine for that. Okay, so now that I have my 2 end channels sewn, I'm going to go ahead and put a bar tack between those 3 rows of stitches, and that's going to give it some extra strength. So I got my buttonhole foot out again. So for this machine with the bar tack stitch, I need the buttonhole foot. Pop off my regular foot. Pop on the buttonhole foot. I already have it adjusted to where I want it. And I can get... Okay, so I'm all set up and ready to go. Okay, and we're good to go. So now that the sewing part of this project is complete, I still have to be able to hang the hammock. So for this particular hammock, I'm going to do it Eno style. I have a couple purple carabiners that I purchased from Ripstop by the Roll. My daughter's current hammock is an Eno, so it's something that she's quite familiar with. And in the future, if she wants me to upgrade it to Amsteel continuous loops and a lark's head, I can go ahead and do that at any time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this piece of PVC and thread it through the channel. Goes on real easy, and I believe I picked this up from the Ultimate Hang. He uses this to install continuous loops and whoopee slings into a gathered end hammock. I'm going to adapt it to install a carabiner. I just push it onto the carabiner, and it's that easy. Okay. We'll go ahead and do the other side, and I will have a complete hammock. So this project is now complete. I now have a hammock in royal purple for my daughter. The next project I'm going to do is the tarp. I'm going to get started on that in just a few minutes. If you like the content of this video and you'd like to see more, please like, share, and subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. I'm Anthony. Thanks for watching. Take care.